separate the state from the ulama, from Islam, especially in the Muslim countries. Maybe today you will have that answer and that solution that we love to listen from you. Without further ado, I invite Professor Ahmet T.Kuru to deliver his talk. It's up to you, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And then after that, we will follow with some comments from the audience, from our colleagues, Pak Amin, Pak Zainal, Pak Mustaqim, Pak Ikhwan, probably, and also our audience and also students participating in this program. Please, time is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and of course, all the introductions and organization. I am honored to be in this very precious institute and the consortium, UGM and UIN and ICRS, all of them. I'm really appreciative and honored to be with you today. So my first time in Indonesia, and I would like to have more a discussion rather than a presentation, a dialogue rather than monologue. I have a PowerPoint presentation where I will basically summarize the parameters of the argument. Then I will try to expand the argument into some modern transformations and discussions. And we'll have hopefully more time in Q&A that we can really have a conversation with the colleagues and professors and students and audience. So as you see in the title, I'm trying to understand the future of Ulama-State Alliance, particularly in the three cases. And the arguments start with today, looking the Muslim world, 50 Muslim majority countries, with the question why we see very deep authoritarianism and underdevelopment problems in comparison to not only the Western countries, but also the world averages. We see certain problems in average in the Muslim world. And this question became even more interesting when we are aware of the fact that Muslim world had a golden age between 8th to 12th centuries in terms of economic and scientific prosperity. So in the book, I engage with two main arguments about Islam and Western colonialism, showing their weaknesses and providing an alternative argument of Ulama-State Alliance. So now, and what is the way for me to control the PowerPoint? Is there a remote or will I ask your help? I can ask your help. Yeah, when I say next slide, please, could you please change it? Maybe I can drop please every time to be more efficient and effective. And in fact, I prefer to stand up, but if I stand up, the video will capture me. Do you want me to sit down or can I stand up here?
Stand up, yes, okay.
And tie is not needed, right? I can also remove the tie. If I stand up.
Yes, stand up over there.
So see in the video.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I still have some jet lag, 14 hours difference between San Diego and Jakarta, and a bit tired to experience wonderful parts of Indonesia. And you generally start with Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Assalamu alaikum, since it's an Islamic university. I should also start like that. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. So if we look at the next slide, you'll see how the Muslim majority countries, 50, yeah, next slide. In the green map, from Indonesia to West Africa, and the problem is deep, and in fact, certain things getting worse because about 10 years ago, West Africa was an area of Muslim democracies. Senegal, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Muslim countries were better in terms of, in comparison to Christian majority countries in West Africa. But unfortunately, Mali and
Niger are no longer democracies. We only have Senegal in West Africa. And Tunisia was the only democracy produced by the Arab Spring, but no more. Now Tunisia is also an authoritarian country. So the problem is getting worse. We as Muslims should do something to have a better future. Is it working? My position here in the video? I stay here. Good. So next slide show you that the problem is not only about authoritarianism, but also socio-economic criteria in terms of literacy, schooling, GDP per capita, and life expectancy. The Muslim world are doing worse, having worse scores than the world averages. And the next slide show how my argument has deep historical roots, because the argument is that from 8th to 12th centuries, there was a Muslim supremacy. And next slide, yeah, or keep clicking, yes, one more click. In terms of science and economy, the Muslims produce cutting-edge philosophers and scientists, including Farabi as a political thinker, Ibn Sina as a medical doctor, Ibn Haytham, the producer of first origin of camera obscurica, the prototype of modern camera, Razi, who differentiates certain bacteria and viruses, and the list is going on. That's how Muslims learn maths from India and taught to Europe. They taught paper making, agricultural products, many crops to Europeans. And economically also, they established the basis of the banking system. The term check in English we use coming from Persian sheikh, and certain economic innovations Muslim produce help Europe to know economic institutions. But things change, but it didn't change overnight. Between 11th and 17th century, there were comparable level of development between Western Europe and the Muslim world. And after 17th century, Western Europe became economically and scientifically dominant. So the next slide. Yeah, as you see at the bottom, I put military, because the real question is science and economy. Military power came after. Some people focus too much on military, saying that, oh, they are military powerful, why they produce science? No, Mongols were also militarily powerful, but they didn't produce much science. So how did transformation from the Muslim golden age to stagnation and decline happen? Next slide. Next, click. One more. Okay, thank you. So in the golden age, two important characteristics. One is that it was an era and a condition of diversity and coexistence. Muslims learn from earlier civilizations and accept the contributions of Christians, Jews, agnostics, Buddhists, Hindus, and others. Therefore, it wasn't simply an era of piety. Yes, pious Muslims were crucial. Islam was the center, but still, it was an achievement of coexistence and diversity. And the second important characteristic, it was an era of certain ulama-state separation, Islam-state separation. So, Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, they put a distance between themselves and political authority. They paid a price. Abu Hanifa was imprisoned and poisoned to death. Ibn Hanbal sentenced to death, barely escaped the execution. Imam Malik was beaten. Imam Shafi was put in chain by the political authorities for their resistance and autonomous act. And we have the number, as you see here, that between 8th to 11th century, a scholar analyzed 3,900 ulama, and 91% of them were privately funded. Only 9% were funded by authorities working as prosecutor, judges, etc. So what happened? Click in the 11th century, you see the map. The map shows us that North Africa and the Middle East were mostly dominated by Shia dynasties, authorities, and that creates a reaction at the center of the caliphate when Abbasi caliphs became more symbolic. They asked Mawardi to write a book about caliphate, and then this Abbasi caliphs, Qadir, he proposed and declared a creed where he declared certain Shia, Mu'tazila philosophers, and non-practicing Muslims as infidels, apostates punishable by death. So the result was the establishment of a Sunni orthodoxy. This was really matched with an economic crisis where the Abbasis, the Seljuks imposed state control over land revenues, the Iqta system. Also overlapped with the nomadic Turks coming and establishing military-based empires, Seljuks and others. So the combination of, could you please click? Keep clicking. 3 more times. That's all. 1 more. Good. So ideological factors, Sunni orthodoxy and the Qadiri creed of the Abbasid Caliph. Economic factors, state control over land revenues. The military political factors, the militarization of political system. Then the agents with, so these are all structural changes. Then agency was there. And some people blame Turks saying that, oh, Ahmed, as a Turk, you're right about the Turkish problem, that Turks really frozen Islamic civilization. And my answer and defense in the book and the presentation is that no, we did together. Turks, Seljuk, nomads, yes, but Persian bureaucrats, Nizamul Mulk and others, and Ghazali himself was Persian. Then Arabs, the Abbasi caliphs were Arabs, and then ethnically a diverse group proposed this new system. And they had their own reasons for the economic crisis, more state centralization, for the Shia challenge, Sunni orthodoxy, more military understanding. And the crucial point here is that when the state centralized economy, landowners and merchants were marginalized. Merchants were no longer able to fund scholarship, and the state filled the vacuum by creating madrasas. Madrasas after the name of Grand Vizier Nizam al-Mulk. First, it sounds good that there is state funding of scholarship, but money came with control. Money came with authority and domination. And the madrasas became institution of producing standard type Orthodox Sunni ulama. And the result is marginalization of merchants and intellectuals. And Ghazali played a role by his, especially Tahafut al-Falasafa, his book challenging philosophers, not only challenging, but also declaring for 3 reasons they're infidels, punishable by death. So this model really persisted. Saladin Ayyubi and Ayyubi dynasty brought it to, so it originally was Central Asia, Iran, Iraq. Then Ayyubis brought it Syria, Palestine, Egypt. Then the Mamluks reproduced it. And interestingly, the Crusaders and Mongols helped it unintentionally. Could you please the next slide? The role of invaders crucial because when the Mongols and Crusaders and Timur, they had massacres and killings, they really pushed Muslims to military heroes, because when you are attacked, when you see the tragedies, you can no longer seek for good art and philosophy and science. Survival and military strength became the first priority. And that's how people search for heroes. Heroes came in the form of Saladin, then the Mamluks. Mamluks, the one really stopped the Mongol incursion. And that's how they rule Egypt for centuries. Even today, the military political role is justified because of this historical legacy of the protection against the Crusaders and the Mongols. And if you keep clicking, And at the time, there was a scholar, Ibn Taymiyyah, in his famous book, Sharia-based governance, Siyaset-i Sharia, he interprets the key verse in the Quran asking Muslims to obey ulul amr minkum. So those who have authority among you, the Quran asks, but who has the authority? It has been interpreted in different ways, that those who have knowledge, expertise, science, but Ibn Taymiyyah says umara and ulama. So ulama and the umaras, state authorities, basically what I call ulama-state alliance, he present as a Quranic order. Yes, Muslims still had important scholars, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Khaldun, but they were mostly marginalized. So, and then Karimi merchants were also marginalized. Then Muslims established 3 empires. We call them gunpowder empires: Ottoman, Safavi, Mughal. Ottomans institutionalized ulama-state alliance. Safavis produced the Shia version of ulama-state alliance. And when Europe had Renaissance, Reformation, printing revolution, scientific revolution, these empires pick up only one of 3 instruments. Europe used gunpowder, printing press, nautical compass. Muslim empires only pick up gunpowder because they were obsessed with military. They didn't get the printing press for about 300 years. And the result is that literacy rate became very limited. In the Ottoman Empire, estimate 1%, whereas Europe surpassed 30%. And linking this to the initial table of the problem of literacy, so the current problem cannot be understood if you don't look at the historical origin of the illiteracy problem and the problem of not taking printing press on time. So now, keep doing. Colonization came after. As you see in this map, I tried to match the colors. So the Dutch color, black, with Indonesia as the Dutch colonized, and then French color with West Africa. You see, this is before the First World War. After the First World War, even the Middle East, even Istanbul was occupied by Britain and France. Even the area in the map, which seemed to be independent, became dependent after the First World War. Please continue. So now, what happened after that? After 1920s, the Muslim world produced independent countries. Turkish Republic 1923, Iranian monarchy 1925. And eventually we have 50 Muslim majority countries. And they show enormous variation in terms of many things, including religion, state relations. Out of 50 Muslim majority countries, 20 have secular constitutions, 20 have Sharia-based constitutions, 10 are mixed. Generally, Turkey and Iran presented as 2 polar opposites. As you see, Atatürk, who imposed the top hat, and if you didn't wear top hat, it was a crime. It's still a law in Turkish law books that they don't impose anymore. So you don't need top hat if you travel. And Khomeini represent almost the utmost opposite of Atatürk as not only ulama-state alliance, but ulama control of entire state with supreme leadership, velayat-e-faqih idea that the faqih control politics. But in fact, this notion that Iran and Turkey are 2 polar opposites is maybe misleading because it's more complex. Because Turkey and Iran originally start very similar. Turkey established at Ottoman, Turkish nomadic, and Safavi Iran start with Turkish nomadic Safavis. They were speaking Turkish. And Safavis were originally Sunni, then converted to Shia. And first Kızılbaş Alevite, then they brought ulama from Lebanon and Iraq to teach Shia in Iran. Then they turn Iran, make it a Shia majority country. Then Turkey, Ottoman and Safavi, they fought for 200 years for sectarian tension and other reasons, but they were very similar. Gunpowder empire with ulama-state alliance, with marginalizing merchant and intellectual classes. Then at the beginning, Turkey and Iran were again similar because Shah as a monarch imitate Atatürk for reforms, and secularization reform continued until the revolution. And then when Khomeini and others made the Islamist revolution, Iran is no longer like Turkey. But then Turkey became Islamicized, and Iranian revolution had certain impact on Turkish Islamists. Turkey has never had a revolution, but through elections, Islamists came to power. So I would call the current regime is populist Islamist. So it has an Islamist dimension, but also popular and populist, and it brings religion, nationalism, and a demagogue leader together. That's what right-wing populism is, and it's showing an increasingly Islamicized discourse in public life. But constitution still secular, laws very secular, still today. But Iran is now changing, as you see the protest movement. And when we look at the future, once again, Turkey and Iran may be on the same way. Perhaps Iran will be more secular than Turkey. We don't know, but how? If you continue. So this is the current political structure in Iran. Theocratic republic. You have elected institutions, president and the Majlis, and unelected institutions. Start with the supreme leader for life. There was Khomeini, then Khamenei. Khamenei did not have sufficient qualification to be the supreme leader, but he was the ex-president with political power. Therefore, the assembly of experts promote him to the qualification, then make him the supreme leader. And he is appointing armed forces, head of judicial expediency council, and half of guardian council. Since guardian council has the veto power over elections, we cannot call this system as democratic. There are elections, but the ulama has the veto power controlling elections. So if we continue, so this is Turkey with ULAMA-STATE alliance with Directorate of Religious Affairs, which is in acronym. So you like acronyms in Indonesia, right? Diyanet, the short version. Interestingly, it was not Erdogan who built Diyanet. It was Atatürk who built, and secularists defend Diyanet with the idea that they need to control Islam, and this institution, Diyanet, controlling over 80,000 mosques and paying the salaries of imam, is a means for secularists to keep Islam under control. But when Erdogan and AKP came to power, they find it as already convenient, suitable institution to really mobilize mosques and then design preaching, especially in Friday khutbahs, for their political purposes. So it was the secularist mistake to really establish this centralized institution to keep Islam under control. Now they should regret what they did, because then Erdogan regime is using Diyanet. So if you keep going now, this new, one more, good, thank you. New secularist generation. I think this is the common theme in both Turkey and Iran. In Iran, about a year ago, there was the conversation.com survey article published showing us this very striking polls. Which of the following is closer to your beliefs and faith? Only a third of Iranian society say Shia Islam. And only about half in total say Muslim. So almost 50% saying that they are no longer Muslim. People say that this is not reliable. Some people challenge. But if it is not 50, if it's just 40% of Iranians, if 30% say they are no longer Muslim, this means a big transformation. And to my understanding, it's a reaction to politicization of Islam, to the mullah state, semi-theocratic republic, young generation leaving Islam to some extent, and there will be really political consequences. And in Turkey, too, there is a discussion of deism. Even Diyanet and Islamic schools accept that certain students are becoming deist, which means they believe in a creator, but no more organized religion. It is also a reaction to politicization of Islam to some extent, and this social changes may eventually have a political impact. And if we move to Saudi Arabia, you see the transformation there in more top-down coming. So MBS, the Mohammed bin Salman Crown Prince, trying to really minimize the role of Wahhabism in the national identity, the Saudi identity. And whether he'll be successful or not, that's a question. But definitely there is certain transformation in terms of women's rights. Women are able to now watch soccer games in stadiums, able to drive, and they have a US ambassador, Saudi ambassador to United States, a female. And these are the things that Iranians may really ask, look, Saudi Arabia is no longer imposing certain things. Why you, the Mullah regime in Iran, imposing us? And what are the reasons? I watched a recent interview of MBS. He is referring to economic reasons for the transformation. Why? Because in Iran, Saudi Arabia, and many Muslim countries, ULAMA-STATE alliance is based on oil money. Historically, the ULAMA-STATE alliance was based on agricultural revenues, but today agricultural money is not that important. The key thing is rentierism and oil money. And oil money is being depleted either as a physical depletion or with the coming of new technologies, new energy sources. So the joke is that Stone Age ended before the end of stones, and oil age will end before the end of oil. So it's good that Indonesia is no longer an oil exporter country, because oil hinders democracy in most of the countries in worldwide. So if we go one further, this is the list of oil-rich rentier states in the world. As you see, out of 28, 20 are Muslim majority countries, and with some exceptions, all countries authoritarian. That's how oil hinders democracy worldwide. And in fact, that makes me optimistic about the future. So this is the title of the presentation, is the future, because when I look at the future, first of all, there is an intellectual debate in Muslim societies about the problems of authoritarianism under development. And I think Indonesia is a major part of this debate, very dynamic society, young people discussing. And these discussions hopefully will produce more democratic solutions and alternatives. On the other side, the structural economic factors is the decline of oil revenues, which will really push Saudi Arabia, Iran, and others, even Turkey, to transform and to accept more dynamic economies, more competitive, more creative. And they really need to expand two things: freedom of speech and protection of property rights. Unless they do this, they will have major economic crisis in post-oil era. And that's why I'm optimistic about the future. With intellectual debates and the decline of oil money, we may see more democratization in the Muslim world. Thanks for listening. I'll be happy to answer if there are questions. Should I turn off this?
Your popular model somehow brings some pessimistic view among us, about the future of the Muslim country. It has been rooted in the history of Islam, started in the 12th century with the rise of the Seljuk, who established the orthodoxy of Sunni during the crisis at the time. And it has been quite, even in Indonesia, many people still believe Al-Ghazali is a kind of great ulama who inspired a lot about the development of Islam in this country. And we cannot imagine that Al-Ghazali is actually also behind the process of the establishment of orthodoxy in the Seljuk regime at the time. But in the final part of your presentation, you provided us with some optimistic overview about the future of the Muslim world, especially because of the emergence of scholars, intellectuals, and also Muslim people who are debating about the relationship between the state and religion, yeah, as well as the economic factors. That is the dynamic of economic in Muslim countries in replace of the dominance of oil as the main economic aspect of the Muslim countries. And you look at Iran, which has become more secular, Turkey as well somehow, but there are still some more homework, yes, to see. Saudi Arabia, but you did not really answer actually whether the alliance between the state and the ulama in Muslim countries can be, can be diminished or somehow eliminated to see the better future of the Muslim countries. Maybe you can elaborate somehow about that, but
you already asked 3 questions.
Oh, sorry.
Can I?
Okay.
Can I start with that? So many thanks, and I understood what the professor meant because we had an exchange before. So it was the first discussion in my book organized by Professor Komarettin Hidayat. We had a very nice discussion, and you touch upon 3 important issues. Let me briefly just mention them. So starting with the historical case of Ghazali, he's very important. And for my personal taste, I like Ihya Ulumuddin. When I read it entirely, and from a religious point of view, I find it beneficial and inspiring. But the thing about Ghazali is very complex because he himself regret what he did. So as you know, he had a midlife change. Initially, he was a young professor appointed to the most prestigious chair by Nizam al-Mulk, and he wrote books against philosophers, against Ismaili Shia, very close to both Caliph and Seljuk Sultan. He was a power player. Then he regret. He became a humble person. He left his dress. His biographer says that I didn't believe that he really transformed, and I went to visit him, so that the man with luxuries, expensive dress had really very humble dress and humble attitude. He really transformed into Sufi. But for my analysis, what I criticize as Ulama-State alliance, Ghazali himself regrets that he have contributed, and he went to the mausoleum of Prophet Abraham and took an oath that he will never receive money from government or sultanate, political authorities again. He will never teach their madrasas again, and he will never join into their gatherings again. So in this regard, even Ghazali, as an important genius contributing the system, realized that there is an inherent problem in the system. There is an inherent contradiction and tension. And his life show how this ulama-state relationship is very complicated, and when they get closer, very problematic. The second question you ask about is whether my book is pessimistic. So in the Arabic translation, they made a black dark cover image. Then it's like Thomas Hobbes Leviathan. the ulama at the bottom, they are producing a tyrant as a silhouette, a tyrant appearing. Then I emailed them, are you realizing that there is a silhouette, a man in the book? They say, yeah, it's on purpose. That's a tyrant you are discussing. Okay. I said, it's very dark. Why don't you make it colorful? Because the original painting is very colorful, right? Greek philosopher, yellow, Ibn Rushd, or a Muslim philosopher, green, then Renaissance philosopher, another. They say, we make this dark because your book is dark. Okay, I disagree because I think my analysis make me optimistic. And someone told me that there is a Salafi argument in the book, because the Salafi argument is that look at the original Islam, the Salaf, how open-minded they were, how closely they work with Christians, Hindus, Zoroastrians, how they learn from multiple things and make their own contribution. That's really the golden age that even Islamists defend, and today, that's the source of proud. And whenever we are attacked, why don't you make any contribution to civilization? We always say, no, look, Ibn Sina, Farabi, and Ghazali also is a product of that era. And why don't we produce a Ghazali today? So we should ask this question to pious people who love Ghazali and ask, where is 21st century Ghazali? Because the conditions we created is not able to produce such caliber, such important scholar. So since Muslim had such an early achievement, that makes me hopeful about the future. And the last question, the possibility of transformation breakdown, it's always there. And it depends on two things. One is the structural conditions, like COVID, oil, global transformation, social media. These are the big changes that I cannot control as an individual. But I have an agency. I'm talking, thinking, writing, discussing, debating. If everybody does that, we will see a change. But first, we have to make the decision. Do we really want a democratic, open society? If we really want that, we should respect freedom of speech. We should respect property rights. That's, I think, the problem. Many Muslims say they want democracy. Then they say, I will punish those who have blasphemy. I will punish those who have apostate. I don't care minority rights. Then what kind of democracy is this? Right? So if we reach an agreement that development and democracy good and it requires certain level of freedoms, I really believe that Ulama-State Alliance either will transform or dismantle.
Yes, we want the democracy, but the ulama also always want to be close to the state everywhere, I think. Okay, I would like to invite some audience, probably Pak Amin, Pak Zainal, Pak Mustaqim want to highlight some point first. Pak Amin, probably, please, as a compliment for the lecture. Yes.
No, thank you. Only short response about it is very, very interesting, very, very enlightening a lecture related to the topic. My questions is because Turkey, I want to see Turkey first. Turkey is the first nations in Muslim world claim that secularism is there. But after, I don't know, 70 or 80 years, suddenly totally different, not secular anymore, but it is Islamic today. And democracy is lost there. You know, the Gulenists are expelled from the country, and I have many, many friends from the Gulenists. It is unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. Turkish experience in the modern Islam is failed, I think. I don't know, you agree with me or not. Let us see Iran, for example. Iran also, Wilayat al-Faqih is not promising anymore. Okay, you know what happened, the demonstration today about the gender issues. Gender issues is very, very difficult in all Muslim world, even in Indonesia, but not so like in Iran. In Saudi Arabia, yeah, little hope, but you know that Salafi and Wahhabi is more offensive, not only in Saudi Arabia, but all over the world. You know what happens in Nigeria, for example? This is the product of this type of Wahhabi and Salafi doctrine and all over Africa, you know. So how do you guess actually in the near future, the possibility of transformation? Is it a real, it is a real expectation of us, as you said, that because of the decline of oil, the decline of and blah blah blah. But is that the near future of us, or we still need more time, maybe 100 years more, or I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Rector, and it's an honor to have you in this event, and thanks for the questions. And with your long-term Turkey experience, the question is more even crucial, and you also had Iran and Saudi Arabia. And one crucial thing is the alternative, because in life, when we make decisions, we always look at alternatives. In the Turkish case, for example, the difficulty is truly to find a democratic alternative. The country is very polarized, and as you said, there was certain moments or decades of secularist rule. And I was very critical of the secularist rule because myself, as a practicing Muslim, my wife was wearing a headscarf, facing official discrimination. I wrote my first book, 2009, as Secularism and State Policies Toward Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey, saying that this French model is too exclusionary and doesn't respect Muslim symbols in the public life, and therefore American model I analyze from history to present, and I propose it. But at the time, secularists, even 2009, was so generally narrow-minded. They published my photo in a major newspaper saying that passive secularism from Ahmet T.Kuru made in USA. So as if I am an American project, right? And to destroy secularism. And then some of my relatives say, you're trying to bring Sharia into this country. No, I was trying to defend the middle ground between very authoritarian secularism and Islamism. I said that a middle democratic possibility try to defend. And I was very hopeful, but unfortunately, as you said, there happened a kind of civil war between supporters of Erdogan, supporters of Fethullah Gülen. Erdogan won the game, and he is now persecuting Gülenists. Gülenists had their own problems. That's how they declined from power to persecution. But now what is happening to them is a tragedy. Thousands of people are in jail with just political allegations, no crime, but they are in jail for many, many years. And Erdogan is really taking revenge. But he came to power with their support, with the Gülenist support. That's a big tragedy that almost daily we are hearing about people getting divorced, people committing suicide, for those families attacked under this really the governmental kind of purge of the Gülenists. So that's the problem. But for the future, there will be an election in 8 months. Again, it depends on the alternative. If the opposition provide an alternative, not only a good candidate, but also a good vision saying that we saw authoritarian secularism, we have seen authoritarian Islamism, we want a democracy. Because you cannot build democracy without Democrats. And who are the Democrats? That's the question. And if secularist Islamist polarization in Turkey become just a game between two autocratic groups, then there is no chance of democracy. We really need the reasonable people in both camps agree on a certain democratic pact. In Saudi Arabia and Iran, if the secularist generation came with authoritarianism, we don't see democracy either. Yeah, Islamism may decline, ULAMA-STATE alliance can be dismantled, but it's not sufficient. That you should have a group of people, elite and among the masses, defending a democratic alternative. That's the difficulty we have in many countries you refer to. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite some audience to raise questions. Yeah, please. One or two or three audience. We collect questions. Okay, the young man, please introduce yourself, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Syawal Simatupang. I'm from Bani Haji Abdul Rashid Middle School, Central Java, Temanggung, and I'm joining the Fidul Quran class. We know that CHP is a secular party, or we could call this as a representation of Kemalists, and the ruling party, AKP, as a model of Islamic or Sharia party. Since AKP became a ruling party, the rule of Islamic restriction had been withdrawn, and Islamic symbol could be shown in the public area. CHP became opposition, if we cannot call as a mediocre party, since AKP became ruling party. In a video on YouTube that I watched, in the Turkish society became excessive about their religion. Clearly, in the case is Islam. It means that there is no option for CHP except campaign to Turkish society with Islamic symbol. And my question to the Honorable Professor Ahmet T.Kuru is, what the solution for Turkish society in order that they become aware from the campaign or doctrine from political party that play out religion to impress the voters in the Turkish election. Before I close my question, I would say a huge thanks to Professor Ahmet T.Kuru that had posted my speech on your account, both in Instagram and Twitter. Madrasah lebih baik, jadilah santri pembaharu. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yes, he is a student from the madrasah in Temanggung. Okay, who came here to see Ahmed. Yeah. Okay, the second question, please.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ahmet T.Kuru. I'm Johannes from ICRS UGM. I'd like to ask about how big the Israel role in the progress of Islamic world, because as we know, if we see the Muslim world as a two big aliran or two big stream, Sunni and Shia, and Iran is represent Shia, and Saudi Arabia and Uni Emirat Arab is represent Sunni. And as we know, UEA has a Abraham Accord with Israel, and also Turkey has a diplomatic relationship with Israel. So how big the role of Israel? Because we know as a state, Israel is a very modernized nation, even though it is a small nation, but he has a big and huge contribution in this world. So what do you think about the role of Israel in this case? Thank you.
Thank you about the role of Israel. And then one question more. Yes.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. Before I'm asking my question, I want to thank, because this is my honor to see the writer of that book, because I totally love to read this book, by the way. Okay, it's related actually in Indonesian context. If we see that among scholars and intellectual actually focus in separation and secularization issue. I was wondering how is the solution in Indonesia, actually in Indonesia, to minimize and to minimize the potential things that maybe we can see in the future. According to the Ulama-State Alliance, is the secularization the only solution for these things? That's the first question. And the second question is maybe regarding to your own perspective, that how could we develop our political theory, since the Islamic political theory is focused on the ruler, like we can see in Ibnul Muqaffa books, Al-Mawardi books. Is there any chance to develop political Islamic theory? Thank you.
Okay, a lot of questions about solutions. Maybe they are aspiring for becoming like policymakers rather than researcher. But Ahmed is researcher, and then, but I think he also has some answers about that. Please.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Starting with Ahmed, the student. Thank you for your video. I hope you won the competition. I was really happy to see it, and Pak Zain shared it to me. I am also thankful to him, and thank you for your teacher to teach you so deeply philosophical that you are able to read an academic book and then present with some English and Arabic. And I remember you keep telling that sami'na wa ta'ana. I said, why is he saying sami'na wa ta'ana? Then some Indonesian friends said that he's criticizing the idea that we hear and we obey. No, be more critical. Don't just hear and obey. And I'm thankful to you, your teacher, and I was happy to share it in social media. And I wish you good luck in your studies, inshallah. So your question about CHP and AKP is that it's very complex. First of all, AKP never proposed Sharia. AKP is not a party, Tayyip Erdogan's party. It has never been a party proposing Islamic State, not a single day. They only defend Islamism as symbols. And symbols like Erdogan reciting the Quran or lifting the headscarf ban, and the ban itself was awful. Yeah, many people work to try to lift the ban because 60% of women wearing headscarf, and it's exclusion and discrimination against Muslim women. And therefore, there is the image of AKP as Islamic party. Yes, Muslim values they defend, especially in the first 10 years, it was more democratic. The last 10 years, unfortunately, it became more authoritarian. But it's not Sharia. It's never been. There's a minority in Turkey, 5 to 10%, who would propose to put Sharia somehow, but it's a small minority. CHP, Atatürk's party, they made big mistakes. One of them was supporting the headscarf ban, but they no longer support it. CHP transformed, at least at the top level. They realized that they could never rule Turkey or be part of politics if they have that anti-religious secular. So they are transforming. And I recently gave an interview to one of their publications about the importance of religious-friendly secularism. So then let me link to the third question on the issue of secularism. My argument in the book, at least in the English version, I work hard, It was very delicate balance. I don't use the term secularism in the book. I'm not proposing secularism in the book. I'm proposing an idea of autonomy, and religion, politics, academia, economy, sports, and all other spheres of life should be autonomous, and they each should have independence with its own criteria. If, for example, as a professor, I lose my academic integrity and grade my students based on their religion, based on their gender, I became a corrupt person. If when you do trade, you give different prices to people with different religion, different ideology, you are not an honest merchant. You are a corrupt merchant, dishonest. If, as a politician, you are elected, instead of representing the people, you favor certain group of people over the others, you are a corrupt politician. And the mixture of economy and academia is bad. Mixture of politics and economy also bad. In my country, United States, we try to minimize the impact of money on politics, but many say the otherwise. That's the problem. And it creates corruption. So basically, as good Muslims, we should seek for justice. If these spheres are not autonomous and independent, you cannot have a just society. So since I came here, I keep hearing the corruption problem. It's everywhere in the Muslim world and in the world. And the corruption coming, the mixture of politics, religion, economy. And in the United States, for example, Donald Trump was a problematic president. A major reason, he don't see autonomy anywhere. As a president, he brings his own personal economic interest in the presidential office. He hold Bible on the street to make evangelicals happy. So this kind of things is not simply, we are not simply discussing Islam and state. We are discussing religion and politics globally. If you bring them together, you have corruption and injustice from history to present. So you don't need to call what I defend as secularism. It is a system of justice where every sphere has its own autonomy and independence. And on the issue of secularism, as I said, I had an earlier book years ago showing that there is a very authoritarian secularist experience system in many countries, in Mexico, in France, and in old Turkey, old Tunisia. Secularism can be very authoritarian because, again, it brings politics, religion together, and they try to control religion, shape religion. The best thing is really separate, giving them autonomy. So about the question of Mawardi and Ibn Muqawwa, Mawardi, and others, I think the first thing to do to reform Islamic political theory, to accept that these are man-made ideas, nothing to do with Holy Quran or the Hadith. Because Mawardi was approached by Abbasi Caliph. The Caliph told him that I no longer have any political power. Why don't you write a book to justify Abbasi Caliphate? It was commissioned. Then he wrote the book about caliphate with very little Islamic reference, so many poems, personal opinions. And what is the proposal? We choose a caliph. We don't choose. A caliph appears. It may be a military man coming with force and saying, I am the caliph, and none of us challenged. He became the leader, legitimate. For life, a man from Quraysh, representing all Muslims. This, even Middle Ages, didn't work. It would never work today. it was a history book, should stay in history. And after that, Ghazali was approached by another Abbasi caliph, wrote another book, and in Al-I'tiqad Al-Iqtisad fil I'tiqad, he had a chapter on caliphate. Then after them, Abbasis destroyed by Mongols, Ibn Taymiyyah wrote a Siyasat-i Shari with more ulama-state because there is no longer Abbasi caliphate. So the first thing to say, these are historical texts. They are not religious. Yes, some religious views, but nothing sacred. And you can write a better book today. And nobody should tell you, oh, who are you from State Islamic University, Yogyakarta? How dare you challenge Mawardi? No, you should say, I can write a better book than Mawardi. So, and Mawardi's secularization, and finally Indonesia. So I think one of the advantages of Indonesia is to have a decentralized system. Centralized systems are very problematic. One example is France. You know, in France, the Minister of Education look at his watch and say, at this moment, everywhere, every school in France is teaching French Revolution history. It's not possible in the United States because we are very decentralized in the United States. 3 different time zones, as you have 2 or 3 time zones. We don't have a Minister of Education in the United States. We have a Secretary of Education. Nobody knows his name except his wife or his husband. So we don't know him. There is no centralized mechanism. But centralization of religion, centralization of education is problematic. So Indonesia has, as well as I learned, more decentralized mosques, decentralized Islamic teaching, decentralized organizations. This is really the way to have more diversity and to avoid corruption and injustice. So the final issue is about the question, the second question you ask about Israel and the Jews. First of all, the contributions you refer to in science, economy, mostly by Jews rather than Israel, because diaspora globally in the United States, Europe, there are many hardworking Jewish academics, intellectuals. And now among the Arabs, those who work hard are Palestinians. So I have several Palestinian intellectual friends in the United States. And interestingly, if you have an Arab intellectual in the United States, the person is most likely to be Palestinian. Because challenges, persecution, makes people working harder. Because of the Israeli persecution of Palestinians, many Palestinians became intellectuals, trade people, they came to the United States. Now there is a parliamentarian in the American House, American Congress, there is a Palestinian. She is the first Arab American, and not a coincidence that she is Palestinian. So the Jews work hard because of the Holocaust, genocide, and very long-term European anti-Semitism. They face so much persecution that forced them to work harder. And now Palestinians are becoming more visible in America. It is becoming easier to teach the problems of Israeli occupation for me and others in our courses because the public discourse is changing. We now have 3 Muslim Americans in the House. So with more visibility and influence of Arabs and Muslims in American politics, we may also see a change in the US policy toward Israel. Thank you.
We love to hear that you somehow idealize Indonesia, you know, but Indonesia is not that decentralized either in terms of education, especially. It's quite centralized. So Minister of Education is quite powerful in managing the spheres of education in this country.
Then
and
you
also
need more decentralization.
yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you propose autonomy as the key to get out from the whole problems afflicting the Muslim country. But is it possible to imagine autonomy to happen in the countries, in Muslim countries, which have like low level of GDP and also unequal access to education and so on and so forth. So many structural problems are still overshadowing Muslim countries. So is it possible to imagine like the ulama in Muslim countries to stand independently from the state while they are really in need of state support in terms of money and everything?
That's a good question. First of all, it's a matter of degree and it's vary from country to country. But at the end, state-centric economies, when they have crisis, inflation and otherwise, especially in the post-oil era, it may really lead to ulama to look for NGOs and more civil funding sources. So it depends. And I think the expansion of more competitive economies may eventually bring the need for less dependence on state.
Any question? Maybe one round more, and then we will come to the final part of this lecture. 3 more questions, yes, please, short questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Kuru. I am Anton. I am the student of Prof. Nur Haidi, and I brought your book because of your book is used by Prof. Nur Haidi in his class actually. And I want to ask you about. I've talked with my friend who work in the field of human rights, and he told me that the Indonesia specifically, but I just use it as the example of the case that I hope you can give me the answer about the case. I mean that he told me that the oligarchy today is very sophisticated who that I cannot understand what we can do to solve the problem. And the question is only because you said in your book that you are that your book related to the political science, not about Islamic studies. The question is oligarchy exists in the Islamic history? And then the second question is, what is the position of the ulama in this oligarchy relation? Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nice to meet you. I'm glad to be here. My name is Sahil Sabil Mutaki. Sahil. Mr. Kuru, we know each other, at least in Instagram. We have communication. So I want to ask you about how Muslim scientists right now, scientists like life science or engineering or sometimes like science major should be do in the modern era in 21st century. You in your book in Islam, Authoritarianism and under development, you explain more about how middle-aged scientists, Muslims do more inclusive and more open to another cultures. So what should we do? Especially in United States, I know several Muslim scientists that contribute to the science world, and also the Germany. Currently, a Turkish scientist, I forget the name, but he also contribute in invention of COVID vaccine. So I ask what we do, what should we do, and you grew up in maybe the best environment environment in education in United States that allow people to learn and share with another culture freely, and we don't they don't judge us as a maybe a religious person or something like that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Latif Azhar. I am from Jenderal Sudirman University. I would ask a question to Professor Ahmet T.Kuru. In Shia Mazhab has a concept of imamah. It's one of the fifth of fundamental of fight of we call it as rukun iman. As Muslim Shia should obey the order of supreme leader, and the supreme leader has a role in politics and also in religious authorities. And politics, supreme leader could determine the public policy of Islamic Republic of Iran, and in religious, the supreme leader can make an interpretation in Al-Quran or Hadith by his understanding. In other that, in Sunni Mazhab has a Ghazalian theology that have a concept of integration between politics and religious, or we call it as a twin sister. My question is, the teaching of Islam, do you think that cannot totally separate it between Sunni and Shia has concept like this, and I think is have a domination between Ghazalian theology and Shia Isna Ashariyah, I think. Enough.
In fact, can we get a question from female students?
Yes.
all the males.
Maybe one female student. Please.
We are commissioning a question.
Nina, tawarin buku gratis, mau beasiswa gratis teng San Diego aku.
My wife will be angry to me if I don't receive any question from female students.
So,
She will ask, where is gender equality?
Boleh tanya pakai bahasa Indonesia, nanti translate. Come on.
Gender equality, please.
Yeah.
About gender probably.
Yang di
Okay,
YouTube juga kalau ada yang mau nanya boleh.
Next time, Isha. Okay, there is one.
Okay,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I didn't bring any question, but I just think about the question here. And my name is Fanny. I'm from CRCS UGM. My question about how the women ulama in the countries, I'm not sure whether you have explained or not, but in Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia have the role to like their voice in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Short but striking.
Good question.
Short but
Yes.
striking.
Yes. Thank you. So quickly, since we are running out of time, starting with oligarchy, as well as I understand Islam is an egalitarian religion, which really emphasized that the closeness to Allah is with taqwa, right? There is no ethnic or nobility, family differences. So, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, right? It's taqwa. So, the oligarchy or some elitism started later, that Muslims interact with Indian, Sasanian, Byzantine societies with certain caste system or certain oligarchic system. And then somehow they produce their own elitism with dynasties, of course. And Mawardi in Ahkam Sultaniya proposes an office which prevent noble women getting married with ordinary men. And this is kind of one of the examples of how egalitarianism was eventually declined, and we need to revive it today. The other question about science, and I think, again, we have to decide whether we appreciate scientists, we value them. And in many Muslim societies, there is the problem, what we call brain drain. Smart people are leaving Turkey, Arab countries, many medical doctors, they are going to Europe because they feel not appreciated And, you know, in Turkish, we says, marifet depends on iltifat. So iltifat, basically appreciation. And your knowledge prosper if you see some opportunities and appreciation. Otherwise, you leave and go to Europe and North America. And then the question about imama, yes, this is a very interesting dialectical relationship, because originally the Sunni idea, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, was that after Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, all of us are equal. No one has any political or religious privilege. Even Ali radiallahu anh. That's the difference. Theoretically, Sunnis claim complete egalitarianism. No clergy versus laymen, and we call in Turkey no ruhban, you know, ruhban class or the clergy. Theoretically, it does not exist. Shia, from the very beginning, they say Ali, then Hassan, Hussein, 7 Imam, 12 Imam, and today in Iraq, Marji, Taqlid, Sistani, and others, and in Iran, there is some clergy. But interestingly, Sunnis, for various reasons, developed clergy, and ulama became a clergy. And they, for example, justify ijma by a hadith that my community will not agree upon error, right? But the hadith refer to ummah as a community. It doesn't refer ulama, and you don't find ulama in the Quran. There is only alim, and alim is as a wise person. It's not a class like Catholic clergy. But we didn't, so we as people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah didn't stop in ulama. We produced another clergy, Sufi Sheikh, Naqshbandi, Qadiri, from organized Sufi orders, have Sheikh that people see superior. They say, if you don't have a Sheikh, your Sheikh is Satan. So that level of hierarchy was produced later on. So then Sunnis became a group of people with 2 ulama and Sufi Sheikh clergy. Ibn Khaldun in Muqaddimah analyzed it and said that it was originally a Shia idea of imamah, and even the emphasis on Mahdi, it was more Shia. Then Sunnis later on learned, and Muhyiddin Arabi played a role with the idea of Qutb and Ghaus and Insan Kamil. So Sufism is good, but to really proposing some superman makes other people inferior and destroy egalitarianism. And the last question about the female ulama, I think is very important for the future of the Muslim world. Of course, within the ulama structure, and there is male superiority, right? Generally, well, if you look at LSR Ulama Council, I assume it's mostly men, maybe completely. So women will play a role, as we see in Iran now, and in Turkey, they are very active. And the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in the United States, I was referring, she is very active, and she is a female visible figure of Saudi Arabia in the United States. So hopefully we'll see more women in religion, in politics, in society, and they will be a carrier of transformation and progress, hopefully. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Kuru. Oh, yes. Maybe you can read some questions.
You can read the question. Yeah.
We have time until 11 actually. If you, okay, that's from Muhammad. Which one? Oh, I'm sorry, Ita. I would like to know your insights on Islamic democracy term and how can democracy be improved in Muslim countries? Democracy lead to growth in Muslim countries? Question mark. And sorry. The statement of dismantling of the Ulama-State alliance and the restructuring of economies are the important keys to develop Muslim countries. Thanks. So it's a comment.
Yes.
Yes,
yes.
please.
Thank you. So about the question of Islam and democracy, I think the best way is to take democracy as a system where Muslims can, of course, integrate, transform, and make their own. But we don't need to call it Islamic democracy or Muslim democracy, because whenever we get a technology, for example, we don't call it Islamic iPhone, right? It's a technology. Or if we have a bank, for the last 40, 50 years, they try to call them Islamic banks. But when you analyze, they are part of the banking structure, banking system. Yeah. What is Islamic or not? I think a deeper challenge, really, bring morality in, less corrupt society, less corrupt banking, more egalitarian system. And then rather than we call it Islamic, let others say that, oh, Indonesia produced a democracy with honesty, justice, less corruption, and then this is an Islamic model. Let the non-Muslims call it that way. That's a better, after we prove something, others may call it, oh, Muslims produce a better democracy. Let them name it, rather than we, from the very beginning, oh, this is the Islamic model. And many of these claims end up as failure rather than success so far.
But Muslim love very much to label things with Islamic.
Yes. So let me tell a joke that in Turkey, there was a bank called Ikhlas Bank. But it bankrupted. And then people say Ikhlas bankrupt. And I say Ikhlas never bankrupt, right?
Okay, I think this is the end of our program today because Pak Ahmad Guru is rushing to the airport to get the plane to Jakarta. Maybe before we end this program, there are some remarks from just 1 minute from Pak Director and Pak Director of Pasca Sarjana and Pak Director ICRS as the sponsors of this program. Please. Yeah, Pak Zainal, silakan.
Actually, if possible, I'd like to ask a question. No, I kept, yeah. By the way, the last question from YouTube, I think that's from a woman. So that should make you feel better.
Yes, much better.
From woman, yeah. Yeah, well, rather than giving a closing remark, probably just a quick question going back to the title. I mean, your title is The Future of Ulama-State Alliance, and I see probably, you may correct me if I'm wrong, the future, or probably a good future, is when there is autonomy between the ulama and the state. So it's probably a good theoretical model, but my question is whether there is a historical or empirical example, because also in Indonesia, I mean, if you see, there has been changes in terms of the ulama-state relations, and in general, I think ulama was used only when needed. Ulama was not there when the state is authoritarian and can dictate what it wants. So yeah, I was thinking also, like in Indonesia, for example, what would be the future of the ulama state? And yeah, it's rather doubtful. I think for many organizations, religious organizations, they continually seek openings because they also want power. I mean, political, economic. So can you, I mean, give a more optimistic picture about the future rather than my worry that it's just going to be different forms of state-ulama relation? Thank you.
Circle of authoritarianism. Yes, Pak Mustaqim.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity to Professor Ahmet Kuru. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful lecture for us that I just want to confirm that the main argument of Professor Ahmad Kuru that what does I mean? Ketertinggalan umat Islam, underdevelopment is because of because of
state ulama.
Yes, state ulama alliances, I think, Jadi penyebab apa itu ketertinggalan umat Islam itu salah satunya disebabkan oleh adanya aliansi ulama dan negara. Yang ini saya kira tesis baru. Sorry, I say in bahasa Indonesia because okay. Prof. Nur Haidi maybe can translate my conclusion from this lecture. Jadi kalau dulu ada satu statement dari Amir Sakib Arselan, lima data akhirul muslimun wa taqaddama ghairuhum, itu penyebabnya adalah ada kolonialisme, kemudian apa penyebabnya terjadi konflik internal dan sebagainya. Saya kira ini tesis baru yang sangat keren, It is the wonderful thesis from Professor Ahmad Kuru bahwa penyebab kemunduran umat Islam penyebabnya adalah karena adanya aliansi ulama dan negara-negara yang dimaksud sebenarnya militer, yang kemudian menyebabkan adanya otoritarianisme dan kemudian menyebabkan orang menjadi tidak otonomi. Saya kira this is my conclusion from your thesis. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I think you got the point,
I got the point, especially the Arabic part. Why are we backward and the others getting?
He said that your thesis about the state ulama alliance is the original one and should be taken into consideration by everybody who want to understand current development of Muslim countries.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor.
Or can I give a short comment? Just need confirmations. Maybe to answer that two questions for some of us who haven't read your book yet. Maybe you may enlighten us about what you mean by state here. Is it a ruling party or all the political parties that involve in the politics in the states rather than the ruling party? Because some might be yes.
No, this is very important. Thank you, and thanks for being part of the organization. And historically, it was basically we use the term sultanate, and sultanate basically holding military power and political. And in the origin 11th, 12th, 13th centuries, mostly military empires by nomadic Turks, Seljuk, Ayyubi, Mamluk, Ottoman, Safavi, then Hindu majority Muslim rule Mughal, which was also established by Turkic nomadic warriors. And this military strength and component of state really persists until these days in Egypt, in Turkey, in Pakistan. You see how military was an important element of state. And the military ulama, that's why in Pakistan, my friends call it Mullah military nexus. But other forms of governments, from the Christian history to the Muslim, is also problematic. It can be a civilian government if it uses religious orthodoxy as the hegemonic public discourse and finance to make ulama civil servants. Even if it is not military, it can still be very problematic. Regarding Pak Zain's question, which is very crucial, and let me answer in 45 minutes that we don't have. Very briefly, therefore, I'll tell. We had two examples of ulama-state separation in the Muslim world. One example was from the time of the Karbala and then the civil wars between the Mamluks and certain Ashab, Umayyads, Abbasids, and both not only Shia ulama, but also Sunni ulama put a distance. Then the question, how and why this 400 years experience collapse and decline? And many political, economic, religious reasons I mentioned, but why it survived in Europe after 11th, 12th centuries? Because Europe had a reversal after 12 centuries. There happened certain institutionalization of church-state separation, mostly because of and the coming of an intellectual class and bourgeois class. And the bourgeois merchant families were key in Florence, Medici family for Renaissance. Then bourgeois was key for Reformation in Germany with printing presses. I see that in the Muslim world, the bourgeois or the merchants or economic entrepreneurs did not have a political institution to defend their position against the military and other source of power. In Europe, in city-states and elsewhere, the economic class had an political institution we call parliament or assembly. And throughout this parliament, merchants and economic entrepreneurs, you can call them bourgeois, they came together, form a political power and challenge. In Britain, for example, so the political democratization started with the Glorious Revolution in England. The parliament, bourgeoisie came together, form an army, they killed the king. And in France, the French Revolution, the parliament was crucial. So I think that's one missing element in Muslim history, maybe because it was too early between 8th to 12th century to have a parliament, to form a political power by economic class. I am not proposing domination by capitalist bourgeoisie, no. But I see them important to balance the power of military. That's why a famous book says, no bourgeois, no democracy. It is not sufficient, but it is necessary. So that's one thing. The second experience we have from 1923, Turkish Republic, to 1979, for about 60 years, you can add Sukarno if you want, then Habib Bourguiba in Tunisia, Jamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, Baas Party in Syria, Baas Party in Iraq. There was very strong secular trend in the Muslim world. It showed the possibility of secularization as a political system, but it failed. This time they had parliaments, but not working. It was mostly despotic, dictatorship. And as I said before, secularism didn't come with democratic way. The top-down secularists, including Atatürk, Jamal Abdel Nasser, and most of them were military leaders. And this top-down model sidelined the ulama, but didn't appreciate intellectuals, didn't appreciate bourgeoisie. They want to control economy. They didn't expand democracy. Therefore, secularization create an Islamist reaction. And when people think about secularism, they don't think democracy. They see very authoritarian state control. I think that's how the secular experience failed. And in the future, if a more secular alternatives should be proposed, it should come with more democratic essence, coming with economic entrepreneurs, intellectuals. It shouldn't come state-centric, otherwise it will fail again.
As the more we listen from you, the more we want to learn from you about your brilliant insights, brilliant theories about the Muslim countries. Yes.
I learned from you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we need to give big applause to Pak. Yes. This is the end of our program. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, let's call it a day. No, let's call it half of a day. Thank you, Professor Ahmet Kuru. And usually we have a bid'ah after the program. Take a picture. that's the ongoing bid'ah. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Atau ya ke depan. You want to take a picture with
University and 2007. I'm sure. But I love because San Diego is just like Indonesia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh gitu. Pak Guru.
Connection. I'm motivated and you are here.
Sini dulu.
Whose gift is this? Yours?
You
give it to me. Thank you. Then we should definitely take a photo.
Yes, sir.
Let me give you. Thank you. So, it take, first of all, it's harmonious project. Take the jacket. Starting with you show the book.
Lu foto sebentar. Wait a minute, Pak Guru. Iya buku sini pakai tas ini. Ya, ini Pak Dir ini Pak Dir ini ada souvenir buat Pak Guru sama bukunya. Ntar, jenengan yang ngasih nanti sebentar. Ini souvenir. Saya nggak kalau ada. Ya Pak. Foto dulu. Okay, let's take a picture together. Nah. Okay. Let's take a picture together and Professor Kuru, you might nanti Mas tanda tangan. Yes, and then okay. And there is also just there's some souvenir from Pasca Sarjana. There's you can see there's some book in it.
I will read
That's
in bahasa Indonesia ya.
it's actually the monggo dipoto tuh Mas Niam dari tengah sini motonya penape. Nah, iku. Ayo monggo.
Orang banyak. One of the dissertation. Who is the author? Because our page is yes, mashallah. Even when we die, they will make us develop, inshallah. Right? So we question and the contact will take it from that side. Okay. Itu dari sana.
Niam. Di crop aja belakang.
Wah. Take it to formal. Yes. Okay. Baik, ruang direktur. And let me know. Very good question. Yeah. You know what we can do? Oh, yeah. That's a book signing moment. Oke, kalau sudah selesai, belum. Ya, beliau harus langsung ke bandara. Ya.